Hopefully you can hear me now. This is my first show, and the guys thought it would be really great to have me have my own show, so here we are. So it's going to be kind of interesting today because this is my first time, and it's kind of nerve-wracking to be up here by yourself because the guys at least get each other. I have to entertain you all by myself. So I'm going to tell you a little story about me so that you know why I chose this topic today, because it's affecting a lot of people. I was diagnosed with lupus when I was a little kid. I was 9, and the diagnosis took a while to come because when you have an autoimmune disease, there's a lot of things that they have to test for, and a lot of them are very similar. So I went through a lot of really crazy testing as a kid. I went through a lot of hardship as a kid trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And then when they did figure it out back then, lupus was scary for kids. They didn't know that kids could even get it that early very much. It was very rare. And then at that point too, they assumed that if a child had lupus that they weren't going to make it very long. So it was really scary for my family. It was scary for me. But we got through it with some really good doctors who took very good care of me. I was really lucky, and I'm learning as an adult how lucky I was then to have some amazing doctors and some amazing advocates to fight for me. Today I chose to talk about medical malpractice because I'm not just with myself, but with a lot of people I know and friends and family. I've been seeing it happening so much, and it feels almost like you're powerless as a patient. So I thought I'd start with telling you guys what exactly it is, and I've got this handy little tablet that'll help me through this because I don't have a very good memory. That's one of my issues. So medical malpractice, there's a difference between like bad bedside manner, a doctor being an asshole, and medical malpractice. So like things that can happen that could cause malpractice would be doctors prescribing the wrong medications, something you're allergic to, or something that is mixes with what something else you're taking and can cause severe damage or illness or death. Another thing would be doctors misdiagnosing. So that can come in handy with bedside manner. I've experienced this myself, and I know some close friends and family members have experienced it, where they go into the doctor, say you're having symptoms, and you go in and you feel really ill, and you're wasting their time. They act like, oh, she's just looking for drugs, or she's just, over exaggerating, and they send you home telling you have a cold, or they send you home saying that, it's nothing, just take some ibuprofen and you'll feel better. And I've seen this go really bad for some people. I actually lost a friend of mine last year because of medical malpractice in that scenario where, I don't want to give away any details because I don't want to put that story out there. It's not my story to tell. But it was really, really bad mistake on several doctors' parts. Another way malpractice happens is emergency room error or surgical error. So I heard of this story today because I was doing research on this, and there was a lady that went into an ER, and she had symptoms, but she was sitting in the ER, and it happened to be, it had to have been like a really, really, really busy ER because she was in the waiting room for over 24 hours before a physician would even get to her. And so she's sitting there for 24 hours, and I guess her symptoms started getting worse, and almost to a point where she started seizing, and then she collapsed on the ground. And the witnesses were saying that she was flailing about, and she was seizing and hopping all over the ground. Like, they described it like a fish out of water. And they still ignored her until a couple patients ran up and said, "You've got to give this woman attention. You've got to take care of her." And by the time they made it over to her, she had died right there on the floor in the emergency room waiting room. 24 hours before a doctor could even look at her. And the only reason a doctor looked at her is because she was dying in front of them. Stuff like that is just, it pisses me off, man. You see it a lot because, I understand that there's always going to be people out there being dramatic about their illness or kind of making up what they're going through, trying to make it seem worse than it is. But there are legitimate patients out there like myself that are living in tremendous amounts of pain with serious illnesses that are very, very serious and could kill them, could make them debilitated for life, could put them in a wheelchair. And more often than not, I'm seeing these doctors dismiss them as if they're making it up or they're hypochondriacs. So I totally get, like, trying to avoid over-treating somebody. But at what point does it become completely irresponsible when you're ignoring people because they're too much of a mystery or it's too much work? I mean, I don't understand those reasons. Another common malpractice mistake is birth injury. I read a story today about a child that, because of the way the mother gave birth and that they ignored the symptoms that she was having, they should have done an emergency C-section to get the baby out of there, but they made the mom go through it naturally. And I'm not sure of all the details of how that worked, but because they waited, the baby suffered oxygen loss to the brain, and that child had cerebral palsy because of it. And there was another one where a child ended up unable to function at all, like a bunch of brain damage. They couldn't talk, couldn't walk, and they were paralyzed for life because of birth injury. That's scary, you know. Also, something I read today, which is crazy, is wrongful amputation. Like, how does that happen? I read a story about a hospital in 2007 that over the course of 1 year, they surgically went in and performed surgery on the wrong side of these patients' brains. Okay? And then I read the story about this poor guy who went in for, he had a mass in his testicle, and they removed the wrong testicle. And then there was this Army veteran who went in, he had a diseased leg, and they were supposed to amputate his leg, and they amputated the wrong leg. Like, I mean, how does this happen? It's just crazy reading about this stuff. And I'm hoping that you guys will give me some of your input, because I'd love to hear what everybody thinks about this. I've heard lots of stories from friends of mine, but I'd love to hear stories from people that I may not know. Well, that's nice. Anyway, sorry, I was reading a comment that wasn't so fun. Another thing I was reading about, I'm going to try to get to it here. Hi, Jim. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to learn this tablet. I don't know, it doesn't work the same as my phone, so if I'm trying to read something, it won't let me read comments and what I'm talking about at the same time. So I'll go back and forth here. So there's some other stuff, like if you didn't know, medical malpractice is now the third leading cause of death in the U.S. Third leading cause of death, you guys. I mean, that's insane. 195,000 patients die in hospitals each year because of preventable mistakes. Let's see. I had this story I wanted to tell you guys, but I wanted to read it because it was really, really, really crazy, and I didn't want to miss it. Okay, let me see here. Here it is. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of reading, and I'm sorry for that, but it's a really sad story. The story's about a patient. He was wide awake during surgery, and how that happened is because when they put you under anesthesia, you are given a paralytic, which paralyzes you so that you don't move, and you're also given an anesthetic that'll knock you out. And in this guy's case, in 2006, Sherman Sizemore underwent surgery. While the first agent, the paralytic, was properly administered, the anesthetic was not. And that meant the patient was wide awake and could feel everything, but he couldn't say anything and he couldn't alert the doctors. So it took 16 minutes into his surgery before they recognized that this gentleman was wide awake and could feel everything. They said overall the patient had nearly a half hour of consciousness and painful surgery. The hospital never told him of this mistake, which is really, that freaking pisses me off. Like, first they make this mistake, then they didn't tell him about this mistake, and they also, when they knocked him out, gave him an amnesia-inducing drug once they recognized what they did wrong, so that they could try to cover up their mistake. He never had any psychiatric or psychological conditions before this surgery, but after the surgery, he had panic attacks and thought that people were trying to bury him alive. He also suffered insomnia and nightmares, and a few weeks after the surgery, sadly, he committed suicide. His suicide appeared to have been caused by this experience called anesthetic awareness, which affects an estimated 20 to 40,000 patients every year. And so obviously his family sued that hospital and the doctor. But could you imagine literally laying in a bed, completely paralyzed, and feeling every cut, everything they're doing in surgery? And myself, I've had a bunch of orthopedic surgeries, which I don't know if you've watched videos on like what a knee replacement looks like, but it's barbaric. I could not even imagine how that would feel. I mean, I know what it feels like afterwards, but could you, I mean, going through that surgery and not being able to say anything, that's horrible, you guys. I mean, I just thinking about it makes me cringe, and I just can't believe, like today I spent the day reading about these stories of all these people going through these horrible experiences, and most of the time it's because of arrogant doctors or people not communicating properly, and it just blows my mind that this is still happening and at a rapid rate. I mean, third leading cause of death, you guys, and these are, a lot of this is preventable. I think they said 12% of all medical malpractice is completely preventable, and it just it's crazy to me. Absolutely crazy. Sorry, I'm just looking at something real quick, you guys. Sorry. So, I also wanted to talk about this other story. I just got to read the little thing. Oh, okay, there's another one. So, myself, I went to a neurosurgeon yesterday, and it was a really bad experience. The gist of it is I've had really bad back issues for about 7 years now. It started with a car accident in North Dakota, and then it got worse with my lupus kind of acting like a jerk and making it worse. So I have like degenerative discs, and I've got some bulging discs, and I have something called stenosis, which is like your spinal cord is pinching on your spinal nerves, and it can cause can make you paralyzed if it gets worse. So I went into this surgeon, and he goes, well, your MRI looks like it's about a 5 out of 10 on severity for us, so we don't want to do surgery on it yet. And they didn't give me any options. They gave me one option, which was something I told them I had a bad reaction to, I couldn't do. And so because I couldn't do that, they basically said, okay, well, that's all we're willing to offer, so see you later. And like, I don't know about you, but I cry when I'm frustrated. So I got to my car and I bawled like a little baby, called my husband, and it was pretty devastating. And luckily I'm going to a new one soon, so that is great. But this story is about a neurosurgeon who went in to do surgery on this guy's spine. And he was supposed to put metal rods in it. And for some reason, he thought it was, he forgot the metal rods. Like, he didn't have any metal rods available, or he had one out of the two available. And instead of stopping and sewing the guy up and performing the surgery later when he realized the problem, he continued with the surgery, and he took the handle of a screwdriver, the metal part of the screwdriver, took the handle off and put the metal part of a screwdriver in there instead of a surgical rod. It only took, I think, after, he never told the patient, obviously. It only took, I think, 2 days, and this guy's, the screwdriver broke in this man. And so, because this surgeon decided to take the easy way out, and, which I think is really effed up, but, because he took the easy way out, this gentleman had to go through, I think, like 17 surgeries to fix the damage that was done from that screwdriver breaking inside his body. And I don't think he ever walked again, from what I read. And that, to me, another thing, it's just nuts. Like, what would go through somebody's mind to do that? To just say, oh, well, I think I'm just going to use a screwdriver in a gentleman's back instead of what he's supposed to use. Crazy. So another one that I read, this is my last one for right now because I want to talk about some other stuff. But another one I read and I had to share because I didn't know. It was really confusing to figure this out. And it was this, and I'm going to actually read it so I get the right details in there. In 1985, an award-winning Miami Herald photographer, Bob East, was diagnosed with corneal cancer. So that's in his eye. His eye had to be removed. He decided to have it donated to the medical school that was doing a surgery to use for medical students to study eye cancers, which that's pretty awesome of him to do that. While he was having the surgery to remove his eye at Miami Jackson Memorial Hospital, someone involved in the removal brought a vial into the operating room with the formaldehyde-like solution used to preserve the eye. So this is the solution that they would put his eye in after they removed it in order to preserve it for them to study later. The surgeon had earlier drawn some cerebral spinal fluid, or CSF, from the patient to be re-injected into his spine. I don't know if you know where this is going, but it's pretty gnarly. Instead of the CSF, the formaldehyde was injected into Mr. East's spine, rendering him brain dead. He died 5 days later. Sorry, 5 years. That would be crazy. 5 days later, he died. An autopsy showed that this solution turned his organs to stone. The catastrophe resulted in policy changes requiring no unmarked vials to ever be brought into the OR. Why were unmarked vials allowed in the ER in the first place? I mean, isn't that common sense? It's just crazy to me. And I want to think about this for a minute. What would I do if I had all my organs turned to stone? Could you imagine the pain? Anyway, so I'm going to read a couple of these comments that were sent in to me. Never stop fighting. I had to deal with this topic myself. Oh, I'm sorry. That sucks. Someone else said, never stop fighting. I had a taste of this subject back when I had cholecystis, gallstones, chronic aculosis, gallbladder disease, and being refused surgery by OHP. Oh man. So insurance also is a problem because they can refuse so much stuff and they're not doctors, okay? I ended up, after 7 years of being denied and living with insane amounts of pain, getting help by going to the ER at Providence, Milwaukee. I'm so sorry. That's awful. 7 years. Could you imagine 7 years of pain? And probably, I'm guessing, you went to a bunch of doctors and you went a bunch of times and you told them I'm having this pain, and they probably sent you home thinking that you were just making it up, because that's what I've seen a lot in my life. And that's awful. Someone else said, my son at 6 years old sat suffering in the emergency room from 2 to 11 p.m. with a ruptured spleen. Well, hey, they ignored him because he was bleeding because he wasn't bleeding that they could see. And I waited in emergency for 6 hours while they ignored me before realizing they needed to take me in to have my gallbladder removed. So this is 2 different stories. So your son had a ruptured spleen, and because they couldn't physically see on the outside what was going on, they ignored you. That's also a problem I've noticed. My husband told the story that we had when we had COVID a while back. We're fine now, but we had COVID a while back. We both went into the ER with our daughter. Our daughter didn't have any symptoms, so we just wanted her to get the test and go out. But my husband and I were both pretty ill with it. And I don't know anybody else that's out there that might have a chronic illness, but usually we can kind of manage ourselves pretty well and look fine, even though we're not fine. And because I didn't look as sick and my vitals happened to be pretty okay, and my husband looked terrible because they had given him Tylenol to break his fever, and so he was breaking his fever, he was sweating, and he looked pretty bad. They kicked me out of the bed, and they put him in the bed, and they treated him, but they sent me out with no treatment. And all because of the way I looked. Now, I know it's practice to say, if someone looks ill, you need to take it seriously. But what about those of us that are used to being in pain and sick every day? We're not going to look as ill as somebody who's never experienced that. And they need to really figure out a way to be able to understand the difference there, because a lot of people I know with chronic illness miss out on treatment because they don't necessarily look as bad as they actually feel. I mean, I'm not going to go around screaming all day long because I'm in a lot of pain, but somebody else that has that level of pain for the first time might be screaming, you know? So there's a different level of how you look, and I don't think it's right to ignore someone because they don't technically look as sick as they say they are. I mean, I can understand the reasons for it, but when you're on the other side of it, when you're actually experiencing something major and people are ignoring you, it is horrible. You feel helpless, you feel hopeless, you feel like nobody gives a crap, and it can get really, really exhausting. Somebody else said, can you imagine how many people are suffering alone with no one to stand with them due to COVID not allowing anyone with you? Oh, yeah. That's a huge problem. I've heard so many stories of people who not only had to go into the hospital and be alone and deal with, whether it be COVID or another illness, they happen to be in the hospital, and these hospitals aren't really letting people in. And so imagine being that ill with something major, or being in the hospital for a surgery or something, and not being able to have your support person with you, somebody that can hold your hand and make you feel calm and comfortable. That's awful. Like, we need to fix this, guys. Are we going to live in fear the rest of our lives, or are we going to start changing something? Because, I mean, even the other day I was at the hospital getting an MRI, and the lady that works there was telling me that she's tired of this, and she's seeing so many cases come in of people being ill because of wearing the mask, or suicides are up, and depression is rampant right now because people are so lonely. And that human contact, that human connection, it feels like our world has forgotten how to be human. And I think that's partially why our medical system is going down, because these doctors have forgotten how to be human. Like, maybe they should start to think about what they would be feeling like if they were going through what you're going through. I know, for example, I had one doctor that suffered from lupus as well when I was younger, and she was my best doctor because she knew exactly what it was like to be in pain and to be suffering with not knowing the next day what kind of symptoms you're going to have, or if you're going to pass out, or if you're going to start having organ damage. And she knew what it was like to be in that state of mind all the time, and she treated me like she would have treated herself. I would never wish lupus or chronic illness or, anything serious on anybody. But there are times when I really wish my doctors understood more. And I'm sure everybody feels that way. Here's another one. I went to the emergency room, not sure what was wrong with me. They finally figured out I had a very large kidney stone. Dr. Quackenstein, that's awesome, was unfortunately assigned to me. 3 surgeries, 4 hospital stays later, I got a new doctor who finally took care of the problem. On my 4th hospital stay, the doctor told me I had went to work that day. The doctor told me if I had went to work that day as planned, I would have died before the end of my shift due to sepsis. Oh, I'm so sorry. That is awful. That's the exact thing I'm talking about, is they ignore you, they act like you're making it up, and then when it comes time to actually treat it, it's almost too late. I'm really glad that they got you taken care of, and I'm really, really glad that, I hope you're okay now. That's crazy. Well, I'm being yelled at about break time. So, we're going to take a break, and then when we come back, I'm going to tell you guys some more stories, and we're going to talk some more. So if there's anything you want me to touch on or talk about in this subject, send it into the comments and I will talk about it. All right, I'll see you guys soon. I was reading something about the person that said they OHP denied them, and they said it was years of test after test after test, and they all said exactly what it was, yet OHP still denied it. So the doctors knew what was going on, but the insurance denied it. I wonder if there's a way. There's got to be some sort of thing that you can do against these insurance companies when you've got all these doctors saying you need to do this, we need to take care of this, this is dangerous for this patient, and the insurance still denies it. There's got to be some sort of responsibility on their part when they do that. I'm wondering what that is. I know that there's patient advocates, so I'd like to say if you experience some of these problems, find your patient advocate. Every hospital has them. Their job specific, their full job is to to work for you. They are supposed to advocate for you and help you get the treatment you deserve. Sorry, just read a really funny comment. Also, get a lawyer. If you think you've experienced malpractice, get a lawyer. It's free to start, to get a consultation. You tell them what went on, you tell them what happened, and they will let you know if you have a case. It says that only 2% of people that experience medical malpractice ever actually sue. And there's so many more people that experience it to just ignore it. And I know personally, I've experienced medical malpractice in a serious way. And that was, there was a time when I've got spine injections where they inject steroids into you. And part of the process is they give you a pain medication in an IV to relax you, and then they go to knock you out, because getting those injections can be extremely painful. Well, they knocked me out with the medication that was on my wrist I was allergic to. So I could have easily sued them, but I didn't. And now I'm thinking back, why didn't I? Because it's not about making a big payday. It's also about making them responsible for what they've done and making sure that they're careful next time so that it doesn't happen again. I wanted to talk about something, so I got to get out of these real quick. And it was we were talking about how doctors can be complete assholes. Like, for some reason, the more specialized they are, the more asshole they are. The higher in the specialty they get, the more cocky they get, the more arrogant they get, and they think that they're God, especially surgeons. I don't know how much experience anybody has with surgeons, but most surgeons are complete assholes, and they don't usually listen. They'll come in for like 2 seconds and say, oh, this, and see you later, and that's it. And when I was reading about malpractice, it was talking about the difference between, bad communication or bad bedside manner versus medical malpractice. And it says bad bedside manner and a terrible communicator isn't necessarily medical malpractice, but it can turn into medical malpractice. There are several cases where them not willing to listen to the patient, them not willing to even be considerate or kind to the patient, can turn into medical malpractice. Specifically, doctors that don't listen to symptoms and don't actually take the time to hear everything the patient has to say. I don't know about anybody else, but I know there's been several times I've been to a doctor and I'm trying to tell them my story and I'm going through all my symptoms and they literally cut me off before I can finish. And you feel like you have no power in that situation. I would say be really firm and continue to advocate for yourself, because they're there for you, okay? They're there to treat you, and regardless of how they act or what they think, they're supposed to be treating you. I did have this other story real quick that I wanted to talk about because I thought it was really crazy, so I'm going to read it, and then after that I'll go back to the comments. This story is about an Iraq war veteran, and I found it really touched me because my husband's a veteran, and my dad and my mom are veterans, and a lot of my family are veterans, and I really think that those in service and those that went over to serve to protect us and fight for our freedoms should get the top medical care, and it seems like they don't. And this story just really broke my heart. So this young combat veteran of the Iraq War was 27 years old when he called the Dallas VA appointment line to request an appointment due to low back pain. Now, obviously, low back pain is common, right? But there are so many things that can be really severe with low back pain if you know what to look for. And I'm actually going to talk about that soon because I found this illness on here that has symptoms that some people I know are experiencing that you might need to see if you can get a diagnosis or find out if it's not that, because it can be really devastating. Anyway, so the next evening, he began experiencing urinary incontinence at home. So not only was his back bothering him, but he was wetting himself. He woke from a nap having wet himself. He presented to the Dallas VA complaining of lumbar back pain, which is lower back pain. decreased muscle strength, numbness of the lower extremities, bladder dysfunction, lower extremity radicular pain, which I think is just radiating pain in his lower extremities, and difficulty walking. He was seen by a physician's assistant, which is a PA. A future lumbar MRI was ordered with no time or date specified, and he was discharged home. With no improvement and dissatisfied with his treatment at the VA, he presented to a private hospital in Dallas, where the CT of the lumbar spine revealed an extruded disc with a free-floating fragment. The diagnosis of cauda equina syndrome was made, and he was transferred for emergency surgery, but it was too late. At the age of 27, this veteran faces the rest of his life as a paraplegic, suffering from permanent cauda equina syndrome. Because the Dallas VA failed to diagnose his cauda equina syndrome and perform surgery within 48 hours of onset of symptoms, he suffered permanent neurological damage. He's a paraplegic and suffers from bowel, bladder, and erectile dysfunction. He must use crutches or is confined to a wheelchair. He suffers daily pain and numbness. All these damages were preventable if the VA had timely diagnosed this syndrome. Now, this is a syndrome I wanted to talk about because if you remember those symptoms, it's something you really want to pay attention to. So if you're experiencing some low back pain and then you realize that you're having trouble keeping your bowels or keeping your urine, and you're having trouble, you're having numbness and radiating pain and stuff, you really need to see a doctor right away, because that 48-hour time period is the difference between being paralyzed and getting it treated. And this is a prime example of really bad bedside manner and really bad communication causing some severe consequences for this patient. It sucks. I'm going to the comments real quick so I can see what you guys are saying. Someone told me to put a flaming bag of dog poop on the doorstep of the doctor. That sounds like a great plan. I think I might do that to this guy if I could find out where he lives. That'd be kind of creepy though, maybe not. Someone said, "Hey Brandy, some of us have just a very high pain discomfort tolerance level. When I got kidney stones, I just went with the pain and figured it would pass like other times. I got 104 fever, which I guess is bad for us old farts. Yeah, that's not good. And tried to just move on. If you get 104 fever again, please don't do that, because once you get past a certain level, it's brain damage time. So even if it's nothing super severe, you need to get that fever down. Just saying. My kidney shut down and went septic. By the time I was forced to go to the hospital, my liver was on the way out. The doc said that if I hadn't been forced to go to the hospital, I wouldn't have made it the next day. I was lucky that I had great doctors and nurses. My point is, if something hurts, there's a reason for it. Don't ignore it." Yeah, absolutely, that's true. And that's the fine line we hit, because like for me, I suffer in chronic pain, but I know my body so well that if it's a new pain, I know something's not right. And if I tell the doctor that and I advocate for it, sometimes they just assume I'm just crazy or making stuff up. But I always encourage everyone to advocate for yourself no matter what, and keep fighting. If they're not going to listen to you, go somewhere else. And if they don't listen to you, find the patient advocate anytime, every time, and get them fighting for you, because it is worth it. I mean, if my husband didn't advocate for me during COVID, I wouldn't have gotten the treatment I needed. And it took 3 days of threatening lawyers and threatening media and everything else to get it done. But you know what? I got it done. Hi, John Nieder. Hi, Mike Dobbs. Hi, Mom. Everybody said hi. Someone else said, "I think that is what made them cover the surgery. They had proof it saved my life, and the surgeons threatened to get their advocate lawyers, or whatever they are called, to sue OHP. Oh, this must be from the earlier one, OHP one, covered on my behalf. Honestly, after 7 years, I'd expect a bit more than just coverage for pain and suffering and lost wages due to being bedridden. But I'm just glad the pain is gone." You should, I really think this person that suffered with 7 years of doctors telling them, "You got to get this gallbladder out. It's disease. It's got stones. Let's get it out." The surgeon said it was the worst they'd ever seen. I would really look into malpractice lawyers and see if there is a way to do something about that, or what you can do to get this. If there's anything you can do, maybe it'll at least teach these insurance companies a lesson about how they're not doctors. Okay, this is like the biggest pet peeve of mine. Your insurance company is not your doctor. The fact that they have the power to deny major surgeries, to deny prescriptions, deny treatments that you need to survive is incredibly insane to me. There needs to be a major change in our medical system to fix that, because that should never happen. That's like saying, let me think of an analogy for this. Say you're, say you're an engineer. You're building a building, and the architect says, we need to do this, this, and this, because that's the only way the building is going to stay standing. And the little construction guys say, nope, we're not going to approve that charge. We're going to do it our way, the way we want to. And the architect says, no, if you do that, the building's going to fall down. And the construction worker says, oh, well, F you, I'm going to do it that way. And they do it that way. That's like kind of how the building falls and collapses. That's the same to me as an insurance company telling a doctor or telling a patient that they're not going to approve something a doctor says they need, because it's that outrageous to me. I mean, it's that crazy. Sorry, that's a pet peeve of mine, you guys. Hi, Jay and Sapat. Anyway, so I wanted to go back here. Sorry, I'm still learning, and I know this is my first show, and I'm a little bit all over the place, but I'm trying, you guys, so hopefully I get better with time. Let's see here. So there was something else that was on here that was really important. Let's see. Sorry, give me a second. I had a couple other stories I wanted to talk about because they were pretty crazy, and I think they go with what we're talking about. Okay, so here's an example of a doctor prescribing the wrong treatment. So this doctor, I'll set it up a little bit. This doctor decided that they wanted to suggest a treatment that wasn't necessary to a patient, and because of that treatment, it caused injury. It happened in 2008. A man in Florida began experiencing unusual leg cramps, and the doctor, instead of doing more testing, instead of trying to find out what was causing it or some more conservative treatments, he said, let's do manual joint manipulations. And I don't know if you guys know what that is, but I do, because I'm very experienced in ortho problems. A manual joint manipulation is where they put you under anesthesia and they literally take your joint and they just yank it. So if you have really bad range of motion, they will force that range of motion in. And the risks in this kind of procedure were told to me, like they were going to do this with my knee, were told to me that it could snap my femur in half. So that's why I decided not to do it. That's a pretty big risk for something that wasn't looked into. Well, this guy, he suffered a stroke during the procedure and stayed in a coma for 4 years. 4 years, this guy was in a coma because he suffered a stroke from a procedure that was unnecessary. The doctor eventually admitted that this procedure was unnecessary and that he was only looking to boost his income. What the fuck? Sorry, excuse me. Seriously? Like, this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. I don't know. I don't even know how these doctors live with themselves. And don't get me wrong, there are really good doctors out there. Like I said, I grew up with my mom was like this incredible advocate for me, to the point where they thought she had Munchausen's, or by proxy or whatever you call it, because she was consistently fighting for me. She had to fight hard to get me the treatments, but she got me those treatments and she got me the right doctors, to the point where she would take me to a different state every month to see the right specialist, because the state we were in didn't have the specialist that would treat me right. So she fought and she found a specialist to treat me, and she took me to another state. So I was really lucky. There are some amazing doctors out there that really care and genuinely want to do good for their patients. But there is this other side that people don't talk about very often, and I'm noticing it more and more and more the more I'm getting later in life and experiencing different kinds of symptoms and different kinds of problems. It's really frustrating to see that there are treatments out there. For example, for COVID, there are treatments out there that can help you before getting to the point of having to go to the hospital. But I've seen myself and my friends and people I know experience the problem of these doctors won't treat it. And I really believe there's two reasons for that. I think one reason is because if they treat you in a hospital, they get paid buco bucks right now because the federal government is handing out cash like crazy to these hospitals and these doctors that treat COVID in hospital. And also, I think they want this to be more severe than it is, and that's so frustrating. And it feels like, I really feel like the medical system has gotten worse in the past 2 years. I think a lot of things have, because we have been masked, we have been isolated, we have been closed off from each other. So slowly we're losing our humanity, we're losing our compassion, we're losing our love for people, we're forgetting how to be human. It feels so empty lately, like talking to people. There's so many people out there that have forgotten how to communicate, how to be there, how to talk to each other, to the point that our nonprofit sometimes receives hate because we're out there loving people and being there and caring for them. To someone like me, it feels like I'm in the twilight zone. Like, how did we forget to be human so quick? And I feel like it's spreading to our medical system. They're forgetting how to be compassionate and how to care. And that's so important in order to treat a patient, because a patient isn't just their symptom or their illness. There's so much more, and everybody's different and responds differently. And if you're not listening and you're not caring about who they actually are as a human being, how are you going to treat them and make them better? Doctors are supposed to heal us. They're supposed to make us better. They're supposed to improve what's going on, not make it worse. And the more I read about this today, the more I was shocked at how rampant it is and how bad it's getting. And I really think it's tied to the fact that we've lost who we are. We got to find a way to get out of this. I don't know how much longer I can continue to be out in the world and see people closing themselves off because of fear, because of they're being told to do it. Like, at what point do we say enough is enough? We need to live our lives and we need to get back to normalcy, because the more closed off we are, the more our children are losing out, the more our elderly are missing out. They're alone. They can't have people visit them. The more we are going to slip down this hole. And it's scary, you guys. It's really scary. I'm going to read a few more things, and then I'll tell you about what we're going to talk about next. And also, I want you guys to send me messages of what you want me to talk about, because I'm kind of open. Like, I'll talk about medical stuff, I'll talk about religion, I'll talk about politics, whatever you want, I'm open to it. So I'd love to hear some suggestions. I think next week we're going to be talking about community service and stuff like that, working with the community, how you can serve your community without overdoing it, which is something I'm still learning. How you can serve your community without messing things up for yourself, but also like how you can help in little ways. There's so many little things we can do to help each other. Okay, let me read this. Remember, doctors only practice, so do your homework. You wouldn't let a mechanic practice on your car unless you were both clear on what was going to happen. That's true. Someone said I had an amazing mother. Yes, she is amazing. She's a wonderful mom. Doctors and teachers are heroes. Yeah, I'm not trying to say that doctors are terrible and that the whole medical system is bad and that doctors are evil. I'm just trying to point out the other side of it. There's a lot of us experiencing this right now. Doctors can be your best friend, your lifesaver, and I've experienced a lot of those. I've had a lot of those kinds of doctors in my life, and I'm forever grateful to them. I had one surgeon that literally saved my walking for like 12 years because he did an experimental surgery on me that had never been done before on somebody with lupus and with the medications I was on. And it was a cartilage transplant. It was a 2-part surgery over 3 months, and it saved my butt. I was able to walk for 12 more years because of that. To this day, was the most successful surgery I've ever had. So there are some pretty incredible doctors out there. So don't think I'm trying to say the whole system's like this. I just think there are some really big gaps in care that need to be fixed. Someone said it's all about money. I know for a fact urgent cares are owned by corporations that have no interest in the medical world other than making money. They do not have your best interest in mind. Think about cancer, for example. If there was a cure, do you think they would use it? Absolutely not. They make too much money from it. Very sad. Yeah, I don't know if I agree fully with that. I do know that there's a lot to the money-making part of it, but I really believe there are a lot of people in the medical system that really do care. But yeah, the money part of it is a big part of it. That's why you see doctors doing procedures that aren't necessary. That's why you see them passing others by, because they see them as, maybe they're not going to make me as much money, so I'm not going to focus on them. I'm going to focus on these guys. But there are also doctors out there that genuinely do care. And like someone else said, it's a practice, right? So it's a practice. They're practicing throughout their career, right? My biggest advice to do, and this is something I need to get better at, is before you see a doctor, do your research on them, which I do research on doctors, but sometimes when you're going to so many in such a quick period of time, you sometimes forget. I think that's the biggest thing. Research those doctors, see what their reviews are, but also read those reviews. People will get into detail, okay? And not every review is truthful, but if you see like either all 5 stars and all 1 stars and nothing in between, there's something off about that. Something pretty off about that, because that means that they're either doing everything they can for some groups and nothing for other groups, and that's messed up. So really look at the reviews, see the consistency of it, look at what kind of training they have, what experience they have, all that stuff. And also ask questions, talk to them, and if they try to blow you off, push yourself through it. And I know it doesn't always work, but like I said, there's a patient advocate, there's lawyers, there are people there that are meant to help you through this. It can be exhausting. I'm in the middle of it and it's exhausting, but keep fighting for yourself. It's worth it. Keep fighting for your care because you deserve it, and don't let them run over you. And again, I'm not saying everybody's like that, but there's a lot in Oregon, at least right now, that are like that. Somebody said, doctors are mostly just pharmacists. I work with them. It's 75% dealing with meds. That's another thing that's crazy to me. Real quick before we go, I just got a warning that we have a few minutes left. That was easier than I thought to talk for an hour. Yes, medications are a big part of getting care. And I've noticed that with the war on drugs has come, I totally get that, we want to keep people safe. We don't want people abusing medications or turning into addicts because of their treatments. But the pendulum has gone so far. It's gone so far the other way. And there are so many patients out there in genuine, excruciating pain, and they can't seem to get treatment. And not everybody's searching for narcotics or big, crazy drugs. They're just searching for relief, anything, treatments that can help, whatever you can do. And it feels like if you're in massive amounts of physical pain and they can't explain why, instead of researching and finding out the root cause and trying to attack that root cause, I feel like more times than not, these doctors are assuming that these patients are drug seeking. They're assuming that they just want to get high, and they send them out the door. And a lot of people I've seen have suffered because of that. So I really hope to see a change in that, because I know from firsthand experience, living in severe pain every day can do a lot of damage to your mental health. Luckily, I don't have any mental health issues. I'm really glad for that. God has blessed me with a very thick skin and some really strong fighting me, but you know, people can only take so much. So I really hope that they think about that. One more comment and then we're gonna head out. And like I said, keep thinking about things that you'd like me to talk about. Like next week it'll be about community service, but if there's something else you want to talk about with that, send me a message or comment and I'll add it in because I'm all about that. Someone said people that want universal health care have had the fortune of never having a life-saving surgery denied over and over again by state insurance. That's true. As a Christian, I do want everybody to have the health care they need, but the government and insurances and corporations in health care are too corrupt and greedy to make it work as it should. That is so true. That is so true. If we get universal health care, it sounds great, but you're putting your life in the hands of the government and corporations and people that don't have medical knowledge, and it'll be just like that person that had to fight their insurance for 7 years. That's what it'll be like. And there are many of us that can't afford that. Our lives are too precious. We can't afford waiting for a life-saving surgery because the government says that we don't need it. So really think about that when you're talking about universal health care, because there's two sides of that coin. Anyways, I think that's all I had for you guys tonight. I hope that this was helpful. I hope that you enjoyed it. Please like and share, and go subscribe to our Backwoods Brothers channel. The boys are super awesome, and I hope that we see you on Wednesday for their show at 7 o'clock, and I'll be back next Thursday at 7 o'clock this time, and we'll see you then. Thanks again. Have a good night.